So what we see when we encounter the work is a sort of minimalist rectangle on the floor of the gallery. And as we get closer, what we find out is it's a stack of individual sheets of paper stacked about 9 inches off the ground, reproduced in the sort of infinite or endless supply. There's a kind of artistry to our own forms of thought. And when a conceptual artwork invites us to consider something from a different perspective or in a new way, we can actually contribute to and build upon that artist's idea with our own imagination. My name is Taylor Worley, and I'm visiting Associate Professor of Art History at Wheaton College. My project is called Thinking About Thinking, Conceptual Art in the Contemplative Tradition. Conceptual art certainly has a reputation of being that one form of contemporary art that's always asking the question, can this be art too, right? And we find ourselves asking, how is this art? Conceptual artists utilize the experience of visual dissonance as a means of prompting new interpretations, new possibilities, new opportunities for what the work might mean. Conceptual art values the human imagination, in my opinion, more than any other form, because it's inviting the museum goer to participate in the meaning of the work. So Felix Torres is a fascinating artist. He's a Cuban-American working in the late 80s and early 90s in the New York art scene. Even though he had a very short career, having passed away so young, his influence is enduring. He doesn't make these monumental sculptures. He doesn't make these big public pieces that everybody has to see, that everybody needs to get their picture taken in front of, right? The work he made in 1990, untitled Death by Gun, is an excellent example of Felix's public art that's personally or privately experienced. Felix printed the names, and in most cases the faces, of the victims of gun violence over the course of 1 week in May of 1989. This is 400 lives lost to gun violence in America over the course of 1 week. Each visitor to that piece has the opportunity to take a poster with them as they go. In the case of Felix, his genius is really giving us a gift of imagination and contemplation, something to consider, something to meditate on as we go home, as we go kind of back into our lives with this keepsake in our pocket, with this poster under our arm. Are there any intellectual or maybe even religious traditions that valued thinking as a good in and of itself, as thinking as the enjoyment of the transcendent or the divine, the enjoyment of God and the world He's made? And that's where the contemplative tradition comes into play. But the ultimate goal is to try and find a way for scientists to study the experience of conceptual art more carefully. What we see among neuroscientists or those engaged in neuroaesthetics is looking at the sensory reactions within the brain. Well, in the case of conceptual art, the sensory material conditions of the artwork are not the point, right? It's the idea. So there's important cognitive work happening as someone engages with a conceptual art piece in theory, but the science hasn't really caught up to or kind of charted a course for how we might study that better or differently. So that's the ultimate aim, is to find a way for cognitive science of art to consider this really influential strategy of conceptualism.